The 1920s are remembered for jazz clubs, flappers, and prosperity. But that picture is incomplete. While some Americans danced in nightclubs, others worked long factory shifts or struggled on failing farms. The decade produced genuine social change, but its economic foundations were weaker than most people realized. This is the story of what daily life actually looked like during the Roaring Twenties and why the period ended so abruptly. When American soldiers returned from Europe in 1918 and 1919, they came home to a country under strain. Wartime production had created jobs, but peacetime brought inflation and labor disputes. Prices rose faster than wages. Workers who had postponed demands during the war now wanted better pay. Strikes broke out in major industries, including steel, coal, and railroads. In 1919 alone, more than 4 million workers went on strike. The government and business leaders worried about radical political movements spreading from Europe. This fear led to the Red Scare, a period of suspicion directed at immigrants and labor organizers. Federal agents raided homes and meeting halls, thousands were arrested, and hundreds were deported without trial. Americans were tired. The war had demanded sacrifice and discipline. People wanted relief from tension and a return to normal life. That desire for escape and enjoyment shaped the decade ahead. Cities became centers of new culture. Jazz music, developed by black musicians, spread from New Orleans to Chicago, New York, and other urban areas. Harlem in particular became a hub for music, poetry, and nightlife. The neighborhood drew white audiences who came uptown to hear performers like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong. Jazz clubs and dance halls offered spaces where young people could socialize outside traditional settings. This music represented more than entertainment. It allowed people to express themselves in ways that felt modern and less restricted. The rhythms were faster, the dances more physical. Young Americans, especially in cities, began to reject the formal manners and strict social codes of the previous generation. Going out at night, dancing, and listening to music became central parts of urban life. Parents complained that their children stayed out too late and behaved too freely. The culture of the city was changing, and young people were leading that change. Women's lives were shifting visibly. After gaining the right to vote in 1920, many women sought further independence. Younger women cut their hair short, wore shorter skirts, and smoked in public. These behaviors challenged long-held expectations about how women should appear and act. The flapper became a symbol of this new attitude, though most women did not fully adopt the style. More women entered the workforce, taking jobs in offices, shops, and light industry. They earned their own money and made their own choices about social life. By the mid-1920s, roughly 1 in 4 women worked outside the home. Secretarial work and retail jobs became common paths. Women gained financial independence, even if their wages remained lower than men's for the same work. Not everyone approved. Older generations and religious communities saw these changes as moral decline. Some states passed laws trying to regulate women's clothing. The tension between new freedoms and traditional values created ongoing conflict throughout the decade. In 1920, the 18th Amendment banned the manufacture and sale of alcohol. The law was intended to reduce crime and improve public health. Instead, it created a massive illegal industry. Speakeasies opened in cities across the country. These hidden bars operated with the knowledge of local police, often through bribery. A password at the door granted entry. Inside, people drank cocktails, listened to jazz, and ignored the law. Bootleggers smuggled alcohol from Canada and the Caribbean. Some distilled it illegally in basements and rural stills. The quality varied widely, and some homemade alcohol caused blindness or death. Organized crime groups controlled distribution networks and used violence to protect their territory. Figures like Al Capone became wealthy and famous. Gang wars over control of alcohol sales killed hundreds in cities like Chicago. Ordinary citizens who had never broken the law before now did so regularly. Prohibition weakened respect for legal authority and made criminal enterprises wealthy and powerful. Most Americans worked in factories, shops, or on farms. Factory work involved long hours and repetitive tasks. Assembly lines increased production speed, but made jobs more monotonous. Workers stood in one place, performing the same action hundreds of times each day. The pace was set by machines, not by people. Wages rose for industrial workers, but not dramatically. Mass production made consumer goods cheaper. Radios, vacuum cleaners, and cars became more affordable. To encourage sales, stores offered installment payment plans. People could buy items on credit and pay over time. Advertisements promoted the idea that everyone deserved modern conveniences. This system made prosperity seem widespread, but it also meant many families carried debt. Farmers did not share in urban prosperity. Crop prices fell after the war ended. European agriculture recovered, reducing demand for American exports. Many rural families struggled to pay mortgages and maintain their land. Some lost their farms entirely. The economic gap between cities and countryside widened throughout the decade. The social freedoms of the 1920s did not extend equally. Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation across the South. Black Americans faced legal discrimination, economic exclusion, and racial violence. Lynchings continued throughout the decade. The Ku Klux Klan experienced a resurgence, claiming millions of members by the mid-1920s. The organization expanded beyond the South, gaining influence in Indiana, Ohio, and other states. Harlem experienced a cultural renaissance, producing influential music, literature, and art. Writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston gained recognition. But even successful Black Americans lived under segregation and lacked basic legal protections. They could not vote in much of the South. They faced restrictions on where they could live, work, and travel. In 1924, Congress passed immigration quotas that heavily restricted entry from Southern and Eastern Europe and nearly eliminated Asian immigration. The law aimed to preserve what supporters called the nation's character. The boundaries of who belonged in American society were actively policed. New technology reshaped how people lived. Radio became common in American homes. Families gathered to hear news, music, and entertainment. Radio created a shared national culture. People in different regions heard the same programs at the same time. Broadcasts brought distant events into living rooms. Sports, political speeches, and variety shows reached mass audiences. Automobiles changed cities and social life. Cars allowed people to travel farther and more freely. Young people used cars to escape parental supervision. Dating moved out of family parlors and onto roads leading out of town. Cities expanded outward as people could live farther from work. Movies became a major form of entertainment. Silent films created national celebrities like Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford. Going to the cinema became a weekly routine for millions. Electricity spread through urban homes, changing everything from cooking to cleaning. Electric irons, refrigerators, and washing machines reduced household labor. Life moved faster, and people adapted quickly. The stock market attracted new attention during the 1920s. People who had never invested before began buying stocks. Brokers allowed customers to purchase shares with borrowed money, a practice called buying on margin. This made it possible to invest with little cash up front. An investor might put down 10% and borrow the rest. If stock prices rose, profits multiplied. If they fell, losses did too. Stock prices rose steadily. People began to believe the market would keep climbing. Investment advice spread through informal networks. Men discussed stock tips at barbershops and social gatherings. Housewives followed market reports in newspapers. Office workers used their lunch breaks to check stock prices. Some people quit their jobs to trade full-time. The belief that anyone could get rich through the market became widespread. Financial experts and political leaders encouraged this confidence. President Calvin Coolidge declared that the business of America was business. Economists predicted continued growth. Few voices warned about the risks of speculation. What many failed to recognize was how much of this growth depended on borrowed money and confidence alone. By the late 1920s, warning signs appeared. Factories had increased production, but consumer demand could not keep pace. Warehouses filled with unsold goods. Companies slowed production and laid off workers. Farm prices continued to fall. leaving rural communities in financial trouble. Banks that had lent money to farmers began to fail. Personal debt levels rose as more people borrowed to buy consumer goods and stocks. Wealth inequality widened. A small percentage of Americans controlled most of the nation's wealth, while wages for workers remained relatively flat. The gap between rich and poor had reached levels not seen since before the war. Most families continued spending, investing, and borrowing as if prosperity were permanent. Business leaders and government officials insisted the economy was sound. Newspapers published optimistic forecasts. The music and parties continued, but the foundation was weakening. The system required constant confidence to survive. The Roaring Twenties were a period of real social change. Cities modernized, women gained new freedoms. Technology altered daily life. Culture became more expressive and less restrained, but the prosperity was unevenly distributed and poorly supported. When the stock market collapsed in October 1929, it exposed how fragile the economic structure had been. The Roaring Twenties remain a reminder that rapid change without stability carries consequences. If you found this look at daily life in the 1920s useful, there's more to explore. What aspects of this period interest you most? Let me know in the comments.